Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Yellow Gloves podcast. So, Cage Warriors 158. That was a fucking experience and a half, wasn't it? Absolutely incredible card from start to finish. I mean, this is probably, we've had some great servings with the Rome cards, but for me, this is probably the best one they've had. I don't know, actually. Martignoni's win against Wooding feels more memorable and feels more like a watershed moment for Italian MMA. But as someone who's not like Italian or intrinsically tied to the scene, this card just felt a lot more special to me. I actually said it before the card started that the prelims looked incredible. And what we ended up getting, in my opinion, was probably the best prelims we've gotten year round for Cage Warriors. Just incredible from start to finish. So many great finishes, so many great moments. Really, the last two cards back to back have been an absolute delight. It's actually crazy for me having started this podcast when I did, because we've not really had a bad card since. I mean, we had a pretty shoddy San Diego card in March or something like that. But thankfully, I was in Japan. I was in Tokyo, so I didn't watch that. Instead, I got to watch K-Festa. So I guess I'm the real winner here. But that's probably been the only kind of shoddy card this year, really. But these two back-to-back have been unreal. So Cage Warriors 158, I mean, we should just get straight into it because we've got 15 fights to talk about, which is a hell of a lot of fights. But the main event, obviously, we had Shaj Haque versus Michele Martignoni. Wow. Shaj Haque defends his flyweight title. First time defending it. And just pitches an absolutely perfect performance against Martignoni. I've got a lot of opinions on this fight, and I know they're controversial because I saw the reaction after the fight, and truly I didn't see what others were seeing. People really pitched this as, after the fight as, wow, that was just a war between the two guys. That was an incredible war. Martignoni, took it to Shaj. And what I saw, really and truly, was an absolute boxing clinic from Shaj Haque. Genuinely one of the best boxing performances I've seen in MMA in a while. Just fought so beautifully behind that jab. And look, I said it on Twitter, and I said it at the end of last week's pod. People need to stop sleeping on Shaj. People need to stop sleeping on him defensively as well. I can't remember the last time I've seen Shaj get cut. Yes, I've seen him get dropped against Creasy, and that certainly happened, and that was insane. But Shaj doesn't really get hurt much. The reason he doesn't get hurt much is because he's so fucking defensively sound. The way he moves off the back foot, I mean, this was a total destruction of Martignoni. And when I said that I was going to be potentially controversial here, is I don't think Martignoni did much in this fight. I personally thought Shaj won every single round. Maybe round 2 you could give to Martignoni. But I've watched it back, and in my opinion, Shaj just was perfect, and Martignoni just couldn't find him. The whole fight, he just couldn't find Shaj. Whenever he punched in combination, Martignoni, that's when he started to find a few moments, but he kept going in for these singular shots, and it was nothing. Shaj was dipping out, bang, left jab, bang, left jab. Just this really nice kind of ducking, jab. Every defensive movement that Shaj took in this fight was almost followed up with a jab. It was incredible. Like, Martignoni was not only getting punished he was not only missing his shots, but he was getting punished for missing them as well. And I just think that this immediately is one of my favourite performances of the year. And we'll definitely be talking about it in the end of year awards show because, yeah, I mean, I just utterly kind of speechless at Shaj's approach and how he managed to pull it off. I personally picked Shaj to win. Well, I didn't think it would be like that. I didn't really suspect that there would be a boxing clinic from Shaj, but I just thought that he'd be able to outlast Martignoni. I thought it'd be close, super competitive. I don't think this fight was too competitive. Maybe I need to watch it for a third time. Maybe people got swept up. And I know that in the arena, it must have been a different vibe watching it because it was a lot of forward pressure from Martignoni. But a lot of the shots that even when he was landing, a lot of them were getting blocked. And for the most part, he wasn't landing because Shaj was just in and out. For 25 minutes, Shaj was just perfect. Like, I don't think, like, if you've competed at any kind of level in martial arts, whether you've done jiu-jitsu or anything like that, then you'll know to be focused for a period of time while adverse shit is also happening to you. So, to kind of pass my words and make this shorter, if someone's punching you or trying to punch you in the face for 25 minutes and you stick to your game plan for all 25 minutes. You don't wane at any point. You don't stutter at any point. You don't halt at any point. You don't switch tactics at any point. Obviously, it's good to be, flexible and malleable in a cage or in any martial art competitively. But Shaj really just, for 25 minutes, he had Martignoni just walking him down. And for 25 minutes, he just stuck to his game plan. And that is a testament to like his level of confidence, but a testament to his intelligence as well. I honestly I'm pausing a bit here, but I really think that Shaj should be in the UFC. The only thing that works against him is his age, and he's not that performance was unreal, but Shaj isn't the most, I know for a lot of people he's not the most exciting fighter, but I mean I could cut you a highlight package right now in half an hour with Shaj's knockout of Creasy and some of his other great moments of his career and clips from that fight, and I would take that to fucking Dana White or whoever, Sean Shelby or whichever dingus is running the show over there, and I could probably persuade them to sign Shaj. Like just do it, because look, he's defended his title against a guy who is very, very good in Martignoni. Like, Martignoni's a top fighter, make no mistake about it. He looked good with the weight cut, didn't look drained. I was worried in the back of my mind maybe Martignoni's going to struggle at 125 and Shaj will win based off the fact that Martignoni's weak or that Martignoni gasses out quickly. That wasn't the case. He looked well conditioned. He fought well enough. Shaj was just 10 times better than him on the night. I'd say, honestly, I'd love to see Shaj in the UFC. I don't know that he'd be incredibly appealing, but flyweight right now is incredible, and Shaj will just make a great, great piece of that. Look, I'm not breaking this down round by round as I tend to do, because it really was rinse and repeat, left jab, right hook, left jab, right hook. Just an incredibly sharp defensive and offensive performance, just a boxing clinic. And if you want to see good defensive footwork in MMA, which, if you've watched enough MMA, is not always easy to find. You want to see good defensive footwork, go and watch Shaj Haque fight, or just watch his fight with Martignoni. If you're listening to this and you haven't watched it, go back and watch it, because there's so much to kind of draw away from that. And it's a shame that not a lot of great content creators for MMA analysis are covering Cage Warriors in depth, unless someone gets signed to the UFC like a Hardwick or something. But if this had been in the UFC, you'd see countless of, if it had been a big enough profile fight, you'd see countless videos online on social right now of here's how Shaj Haque dipped into his left hook, here's how he evaded Martignoni's pressure, here's how his lead leg allowed him to dissuade Martignoni's pressure as well, his foot placement and everything. There's so many great things that Shaj Haque did. Incredible performance. Like I said, it will be one that for me will go straight into the shortlist for Yellow Gloves Performance of the Year. He just danced around a dangerous and hungry Martignoni and picked him apart with his jab. Tremendous, really. Not a crazy amount more to say. Just props to Shaj. Hope he gets to defend again. Maybe he moves up. I know Bantamweight's a shark tank right now, but you never know. Vacant title. Could they push for Shaj to be champ? I don't know. I don't think so. This is the only sad thing, is I don't think Shaj is incredibly appealing for Cage Warriors, which really pisses me off, because he should be. Got a big backing behind him. He's got the uniqueness of being a Bangladeshi fighter. He'd be the first Bangladeshi fighter if he went to the UFC, right? He'd be the first one. So, I mean, they really should be getting behind this guy. Yes, he's later in his career, but performances he's been putting in, the way he's been winning fights recently, props to Shaj Haque. Let's move on to the co-main event. So the co-main event in this card was Dario Bellandi versus Naglis Kanisauskas. If you know me, I rate both fighters massively. And actually, for me, this fight was, if someone had won really convincingly, which, spoiler alert, they didn't, but if there had been a really, really convincing, or Bellandi went out there and just smoked Kanisauskas, knocked him out in the first round, or if Kanisauskas had just caught him with a really nice kind of arm bar or triangle off his back, then maybe, I personally thought this could have had title implications. Ended up being a very dull fight. I think Kanisauskas really hunted the clinch approach up against the fence, and Bellandi was just stronger. And it was very much one of those textbook MMA fights or textbook MMA approaches where Kanisauskas wanted to clinch, and Bellandi was like I said, he was stronger than him, and Kanisauskas had no secondary choice. He had no other approach really to have. I thought he won the first round based off the fact that there wasn't much going on in the fight, and he controlled it, right? And there wasn't any damage or anything that you could fall onto, so it really was about control. But in the second round, actually, and in the third round, Bellandi just, started to do the best work possible. He had I believe he had some really good ground and pound in the second, and Kanisauskas, just got by recovering close guard. There was a knee bar that Kanisauskas fished for, but he kept fishing for these knee bars, arm bars, wasn't getting them off, and was getting beaten up on the ground. For me, it was disappointing to see Kanisauskas fight like that personally, because I feel like he could have approached it a bit better. He could have been more dominant. He could have been more assertive in his approach. But really, it was clearly the goal was to take Bellandi up against the fence and do something to him. But it didn't work. So Bellandi kind of outlasted Kanisauskas and just looked better in the positions where Kanisauskas wanted to look better than Bellandi. So Bellandi just was, like I said, just looked better than him there. 29-28 for Bellandi. Not enough, in my opinion, to be in a title picture. But what I would like to see is I would like to see the Will Curry rematch. So you do Stanton-Stewart 2, but let him marinate between Curry and Stanton, and also you get the opportunity to do Curry versus Stewart, which I think would be a banger if Stewart actually beats Stanton. But in the meantime, you do Bellandi-Curry 2, right? So Curry has a win over Bellandi. It was 3 years ago, so there's ample enough time between both fights. In my opinion, that's what you do. Not going to keep talking about this fight because it wasn't incredibly entertaining. But look, Bellandi did what he had to do against another up-and-coming prospect and a really dangerous finisher in Naglis Kanisauskas. So props to Bellandi. Let's see what happens next for him. We then had the return of the Dragon, Mason Jones, versus Alexandre Ribeiro. Not much to say about this fight. It was Mason Jones at his brilliant best. I mean, he hadn't fought in quite a while. Obviously no longer with the UFC, which I think is a travesty, to be honest. The guy's never in a dull fight. He had a few impressive performances there. Obviously the Onama win is going to age beautifully, in my opinion, if it hasn't done already. And, he was beating the absolute piss out of Alan Patrick before the eye poke. Really good fight as well with Mike Davis. Super entertaining back and forth brawl. But nice to see Mason Jones back from a selfish perspective, because I get to cover him on the podcast, and that makes me very happy. So Mason Jones, he's back at 155 pounds, didn't miss a beat. Obviously Ribeiro is someone who's definitely was brought in to be a warm-up fight for Jones. I wouldn't say like an easy fight or a can or anything like that, because Ribeiro finishes a lot of fights, but he also gets finished a lot. So they knew what they were doing. They were putting a hammer and tongs guy in there against another hammer and tongs guy who also is way more technically sound in Mason Jones. Ribeiro is pumping the jab early, but Mason Jones got him down on the ground, started raining down really, really powerful strikes. Then it got back to his feet. Mason Jones heavy leg kick, and then started to go to the body with that kick as well. Jones was doing really well, in my opinion, to kind of crash into the pocket, and that's a theme of this fight. A lot of fighters doing well to kind of crash the distance, get into the pocket and get their digs in. Jones's jab was then popping Ribeiro's head back, and then before you knew it, just as we're getting to like the business end of the first round with like a minute and a half left, Jones just starts blitzing Ribeiro with hooks and uppercuts. Ribeiro tries to run away and then gets marched down and dropped with another flurry. Dan Moverheady stepped in. I thought it was a really good stoppage. It was one of those where, like I spoke about last week, ex-fighter is getting beaten on, isn't doing anything. Referee steps in. All of a sudden, I could have got him. I was in the fight, and it's like, well, you weren't. Actually, the only reason you feel like you are now is because the guy's no longer punching you in the skull. And we had it right there. Mason Jones back in the win column under the Cage Warriors banner. They are not going to waste any time putting him in the title picture, I'm sure of it. And I said this on Twitter, and I don't know if people agree with this. Maybe tweet me if you disagree, but don't be surprised if Mason Jones slots into the vacant welterweight title match. I'd love to see him and Fleminas fight. I know he's a lightweight, but let's not forget he was welterweight champion, and he can obviously make the weight. And I think just to put some gold around his waist and fast track him back to the UFC, do not be surprised if Cage Warriors do that with Mason Jones. Jones Fleminas towards the end of the year. Who says no, really? But I know realistically he's probably going to stick around at 155. I know he wants a fight in San Diego, so I don't know, maybe Kyle Driscoll versus Mason Jones? Potentially, I think that would be a good fight. So it was good to see Mason Jones back. We then had our only female fight of the card, which was a strawweight bout between Michele Martignoni versus Amanda Torres. This was certainly a fight. People really enjoyed it in the arena, actually, and I got the feeling from the commentary box that it was probably more entertaining in person than it was on TV, when you actually realise that a lot of the strikes aren't landing, and it's a lot of Martignoni pressing forward, making noises, and not really landing a lot of her shots. I thought Amanda Torres wasn't great, but she was good at being the one on the back foot and fighting off the back foot and actually landing most of the shots that she was throwing. Obviously, Martignoni was saved by the bell at the end of the first round. Torres landed a really good head kick, but I think I haven't watched it back, but it looked like Martignoni dipped into it. So I think she was aiming for the body, and then Martignoni kind of dipped into the kick and ended up crushing her skull. Saved by the bell, obviously. There were a few seconds left, and yeah, Martignoni recovered really well. Props to her. Second round, Torres, I felt, became more comfortable in the second round. Whenever Martignoni stepped into range, Martignoni was doing a lot of pitter-patter, but yeah, Amanda Torres was getting backed up, but she was landing off the back foot. People disagreed with the decision with Amanda Torres winning. I personally thought Torres won every single round. I scored it 30-27 Torres. I didn't really see much of the hype in Martignoni's performance. I think it was probably appealing to the eye if you're looking at if you watch fights and you're just looking at the aggressor, the one pressing forward, which a lot of people do when they're, especially if you're in an arena, you're swayed by noise and everything like that. But I don't know. I think without sounding pretentious, I hope this doesn't come across as pretentious, but when you're watching a fight with a more critical eye, for example, if you're like myself, you're taking notes because you want to do a podcast, you're not always just getting swayed by the person pressing forward. And if you're a judge, you'd certainly hope so too, that they're not getting swayed. And thankfully, Amanda Torres got the decision, so they weren't swayed. But it was a splitty. But yeah, for me, Amanda Torres, she did really well off the back foot. Pieced up Martignoni, moving backwards. What more can you say? Decent performance from Amanda Torres. Will we see her again? Probably not. It's hard with cage warriors with the female divisions because you never really know when people are going to fight next. I just want to see Jasmine Favero fight again, to be honest. I think she's an awesome prospect at 135 pounds. But other than that, I mean, it just feels like whenever there's a Wales card or a Italy card, like a Rome card or something, that's when they'll throw in the odd female fight just to get bums in seats and to get more crowd reaction, have a hometown favourite. It makes sense. But yeah, I've probably spoken about this fight longer than probably anyone has collectively when they're recapping the cards. So let's swiftly move on to a pretty bonkers fight in Michele Pagani versus James Power. This fight was fucking awesome in my opinion. A really, really good fight between two incredible prospects. Two guys who have very appealing, sexy records at 6-0 versus 4-0, I think, for James Power, something like that. Obviously no longer because, spoiler alert, Pagani won. But I really, really enjoyed this fight. I thought Power took the first round. They were both trading kicks to the body really well, both moving exceptionally well, making reads, finding gaps in each other's striking as well, which was nice. Power worked the roundhouse to the body really nicely. Just really good, some of the body work that James Power had in this fight. Very, very close fight. Second round, I thought Pagani took this, but second round for me was the swing round, because I think round 3 and round 1 were pretty clear. Round 3 was the clearest of the fight for Pagani, which we'll talk about. But second round, Power had some nice digs to the body with the lead hook. Pagani was landing at ease though whenever he threw strikes up the middle, right? So he had a few front kicks, he had a few just straight jabs and everything. So that's when he was landing. And there was a spinning elbow as well that landed beautifully, and Power did well to recover and just go for the takedown attempt. But the impactful shots of damage was all on Pagani's side in the second round, in my opinion. Though at the very end, James Power lead left hook to the body and then roundhouse kick to the body that looked to have frozen Pagani a bit, but Pagani kind of, I guess, recovered fairly quickly, and then the round ended. But yeah, 19-19 going into the second. going into the third even. And, even watching the fight back, you could probably argue that James Power wins that second round. It's just the spinning elbow is such an impactful strike, and it's such a kind of swing moment in the fight that it's understandable why that took the scorecard, and it took it for me as well. So I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here. Round 3, Power started rushing, got reversed into the fence, and then reversed Pagani on the fence. They were doing a bit of back and forth along the cage. Power was doing really great work whenever he committed to kind of flurrying with his strikes. When he was going singular, they weren't really landing, but flurrying, Pagani was easily backed up. But then I think like 3 minutes in, or like 2.5 minutes into the fight, Pagani took Power down, went straight into side control, straight into mount, and yeah, Power had a nice elbow off his back, but then after that it was just Pagani slicing Power right open with a bunch of elbows. Some really good strikes, really powerful strikes from Pagani, who's properly trying to finish the fight. Power was cognizant and moving on bottom, it has to be said, but I felt like if Pagani just kept fucking relentlessly throwing strikes, even if they weren't landing, referee might have stepped in at one point. He really, really messed Power up on the ground in that third. But, I mean, for me, 2 super prospects. Sky's the limit for James Power. It's literally just a bump in the road. I can't wait to see him again. Even watching that fight, it was the same as watching his fight prior, right? Where I love seeing these guys tested. Like when he fought Capera, and Capera gave him a little bit of hell, and then in that second round, Power took over. It's not always fun seeing prospects go in there and bolt people every round. Like look at Adam Cullen, who I rate really highly, and I defended him after the loss to Girlean when people were turning on him. But hard to learn much about a guy when they're just finishing people in the first round. But when you watch them have tough fights, like to bring up another next-gen MMA guy, Luke Riley has gone to decision a couple of times in his last 2 fights, and I've even seeing him tested and seeing him face adversity has made me more excited for the fighter that he's becoming. And with James Power, this will be a fight that, you look at his record, he might go on and go like 10-1, 11-1, 12-1, and Pagani will go and have a similar career, and it'll just be like, oh, they just really put 2 banging prospects in there nice and early, and shit happens. But 29-28 Power could have, some people could have gone for that scorecard. I thought Pagani won fair and square. Really good fight. If you want to go back and watch it, for me, it's one of the highlights of this main card. So that was the main card, right? And we're going to move into the prelims now. And I'll preface all of this by saying, I mentioned it at the top, if you've randomly skipped through and you didn't listen to the first minute of the pod, these prelims were the best batch of prelims this year in Cage Warriors. Don't care what anyone says. And we'll work our way top to bottom, so prelim headliner all the way down. We had Emanuele Zaccaria versus Sylwester Miller. Yes, Sylwester Miller, the guy who was disqualified against Cartwright for all the headbutts. Just a pretty insane kind of funny approach from Miller, who obviously, got DQ'd. It probably wasn't a highlight of his career, but he's a hard man. That's, he's not gonna surprise a lot of people. He's not gonna go in there and be anything other than a tough dude. And Zaccaria definitely felt that, because he wasted no time early. Zaccaria landing everything, right? Like everything he threw landed. He kneed Miller in the head, just pieced him up in that first round. Miller survived most of it. Then Zaccaria got the inverted triangle, tried to crank on the arm. Miller survived. And then we went into round 2. Zaccaria had the modified triangle, turned it into a mounted triangle. Miller survived again. Like I said, he's just one of those classic kind of hard men, tough guys. He's not going to blow your mind technically. He's not going to, have like a swing moment in a fight probably. But, Zaccaria didn't give him a chance anyways. Zaccaria then moved to the back at one point, pounded away at Miller to get the rear naked choke, and locked the choke in, I think belly down, I believe, and put Miller to sleep. Miller was never going to tap. And it was, cool as you like from Zaccaria. Just pure grappling violence on his mind from minute 1. Miller hard as nails, but Zaccaria just excellent. Can't wait to see him again. UFC Fight Pass account mentioned that he's got the best BJJ in Cage Warriors. He's certainly got a very impressive submission game, and most of his wins are by sub, but we can do better. Fight Pass account, you got your Reese McEwens and your Nathan Fletchers that would probably start a riot if they saw that tweet. So it's a little side note there. But Emanuele Zaccaria, impressive performance. Getting a finish against a tough guy like Miller is nothing to turn your nose up at. And Miller's a vet, and Zaccaria treated him like he was nothing other than a guy who's over the hill. So great performance from him. Dumitru Girlean versus Leon Hill was the next fight. This, for me, was the fight I was probably most excited about on the whole card. Like, really and truly, I really think that was the one for me before it even started, where I was like, we're really going to learn something about one of these guys as major players in Cage Warriors. Leon Hill's been on such an incredible run after taking he had that hiatus, right? And since he's been back, I think he's got 4 wins in the last 12 months. He's really kind of putting it all together. And Dumitru Girlean looking really good in Cage Warriors. Obviously had the hellacious knockout of Adam Cullen, which is one of the knockouts of the year that we'll definitely be talking about at the end of the year. And, you know, coming into this fight, I thought this is going to be a hard 15 minutes. Someone's going to go in there and, you know, make a statement, but I didn't think it was going to be by way of finish. I really thought they were just going to go back and forth competitive fight, and we'd find out, like, who's the dog of the two and who's the guy who's going to progress forward. But actually what we got was a round 1 decimation. Leon Hill looked massive in there, like a whole weight class larger than Girlean. And Girlean's pretty small for the weight class. He's quite stocky. He's quite short. But Leon Hill, I mean, just everything that he feinted, Girlean was just biting on it, right? And when I saw that, I was like, well, this is probably not going to bode well for Girlean, because every little flick that Leon Hill did, any movement of the hip, he was already kind of biting on anything. And, you know, if you bite on feints, it's not the worst thing. Jan Blachowicz bit at every feint when he fought Adesanya and still won, right? It's not bad doing it, but it's not always a good look. And yeah, Girlean got the takedown, I think like 3 minutes into the round, worked his way to Leon Hill's back, but then Hill did an excellent job getting his way, like, you know, not just getting back to the feet, but getting his way, for lack of a better term. He then initiated the grappling exchange, got Girlean down, sunk in the body triangle, belly down rear naked choke. Just an impressive finish and a huge fucking statement from Leon Hill. Immediately catapults himself right into title conversation. To survive having his back taken by someone like Girlean is impressive enough, but to work back to his feet and get the fight down and choke Girlean out is absolutely massive. I know people are already matchmaking him and Pagani. I say leave the prospects alone. We've already seen Pagani fight one prospect. Why have him, you know, potentially derail another? In my opinion, you do Leon Hill, Kyle Driscoll, and I mentioned Kyle Driscoll and Mason Jones, but that's more because of the way that timelines are probably going to add up for that. And I know Mason Jones wants in on that San Diego card, but Leon Hill, Kyle Driscoll's the fight for me. But Leon Hill in there against a super experienced opponent, someone who's had title experience, you know, fought George Hardwick, did Kyle Driscoll. Leon Hill's ready, in my opinion, to kind of get that push. Huge step up in competition if he fought someone like Kyle Driscoll, but what I've seen him do in the last 2 fights alone, this guy needs to be catapulted immediately. It feels like something big is on the horizon for Leon Hill. Amazing performance. One of the best rounds that I've seen any fighter put in this year. And yeah, to do it against a really big prospect in Girlean and someone who's got a lot of hype behind him, just even more impressive. We had an all-Italian standoff between Nico Serraglia and Simone Mano. Serraglia making his pro debut, Mano making his second appearance as a professional. 0-1 versus 0-0. You'd probably turn your nose up at that. But what we got was a really great fight between Serraglia and Magno. So I keep calling him Mano. Simone Mano. Serraglia did really well once he started pressing and flurrying and swarming Mano. But I was really impressed with Mano, actually. He had a lot of flashy strikes throughout. Seems he's got like some sort of taekwondo karate base. He had an axe kick in there, a bunch of side kicks as well. Really flashy. And that's my kind of fighter. That's what I enjoy seeing. He had a switch kick in there at one point as well. Mano's just really slick. Judo heavy approach at one point. Really nice takedowns and trip attempts. Just seems like an all-out entertainer. And I can't wait to see him again, even though he lost. I personally thought I had it 29-28 Serraglia, personally. I know a lot of people were kind of... You could flip on it. It was definitely a very close fight. But 29-28 Serraglia, I personally thought he took round 1 and 3. Whenever he put his foot on the gas, whenever he decided to play aggressor, that's when he landed. Worth noting, like I said, that was Serraglia's pro debut. Getting a win is pretty good when you make your pro debut, but putting in a performance like that, like a hard-fought, back-and-forth slugfest, is an experience that not a lot of debutants get. So I'm immediately invested in Siragulia's career. Hope we see Mano again, maybe in the next Rome card. Guy seems like pure fun, and he's probably due a win now at 0-2. Scottoli and Sam Kelly was a banger, right? I've not gone back to watch it, right? Please don't kill me. I've not gone back to watch it, but I thought Sam Kelly won. Seeing the reaction online and seeing the scorecards, I mean, every single scorecard was 30-27, and I think there was a 30-26 in there. I thought Sam Kelly won. He had some great calf kicks, really kind of crushing the lead leg of Scottoli early. Scottoli was, in the first round, certainly kind of passive against the fence, not doing much other than holding Kelly against it. Kelly's front kick to the body was money. And in my opinion, he won the first round. Just a more active, more impactful striker of the two. Kelly really enjoyed whenever it turned into a firefight, and I think eventually it kind of worked against him because he got a bit kind of tired and he got a bit gassed. But whenever it turned into a firefight, he was doing a lot of damage. Nice roundhouse kick to the body in the second round. But then halfway through the second round, you saw kind of the switch flip, and it starts with Scottoli landing a nice 1-2 on Kelly, got Kelly down with a throw, fight got back to the feet. But it was, after a while, that holding of Kelly up against the fence really kind of weighed on Kelly, and I think really drained his gas tank, because Scottoli, once he started to see that Kelly was fading, that's when he started to look really good. Like I said, the 1-2 was nice. Have to wonder what was left in Kelly. Halfway through that second round, I thought Kelly was going to be probably down and out, and this is when you started to see the dog in Kelly. Scottoli's left hand was so sharp, beating up the lead leg of Kelly as well, and dropped him with a leg kick at the end of round 2. So definitely second round for Scottoli. And then, yeah, the third round was also just a banger. Like, Kelly was doing a great job punching in combination, landed a 1-2 on Scottoli, which was nice, but Sam Kelly was like bleeding all over the place. It was an absolute dogfight. Front kick from Kelly was good. Still had the wherewithal to be technically sound, which I think is really impressive, but Scottoli was just the fresher of the two, more impactful, more accurate. I thought 29-28 Kelly. You probably think I'm insane. Maybe I have to go and watch it back. But it was, if not that, like, at the very least, it was just a really incredible display of heart from Kelly, and just a really good, measured, technical approach from Scottoli. So props to Scottoli. Look forward to seeing him again. Always look forward to seeing Sam Kelly again. I'm sure he'll be in a banger before we know it. We then had, in keeping with the Italy on Italy crime, we had the Gianluca Roca versus Guido Possidente fight. One of the fastest Cage Warrior submissions of all time. I've not gone to look, but it's definitely got to be right. Possidente shoots for a takedown like 20 seconds in. Roca locks up the gilly, puts Possidente out to sleep in the 29th second. High elbow, mounted guillotine. What more can you ask for? Not a crazy amount to talk about, right? Like, Gianluca Roca, fast submission. Guess I look forward to seeing him again. Like, we didn't get to see anything of Possidente, really. Poor guy shot for a takedown and got his neck taken. So, yeah, just... I mean, I'll have to look at it, but it's got to be one of the fastest Cage Warrior submissions of all time. Definitely up there. Dan Deutsch was back against Alexander Pirev. Dan Deutsch, obviously Dutch fighter, recently got submitted by Nathan Fletcher in the first round. A fighter was really hyped for. Dan Deutsch is so good off his back, like really, really good submission specialist. It didn't matter in this fight because Deutsch did get the takedown immediately, like right off the bat, but Pirev got straight back up to his feet, and then Deutsch checked 2 leg kicks and dropped Pirev with like a really quick right hand. Pirev got up, dropped him again with the left hand over the top this time, stopped Pirev dead in his tracks. Really great finish. Just one of those that, you know, it took a while for Deutsch to get going, I felt, in that first round. But once he felt out Pirev and he cracked him the first time, he was always going to go back in and try and crack him again. And when he did, Pirev went. Really good performance from Dan Deutsch. This guy's so much fun. This was at a catch weight, but he's typically at a bantamweight. Really hyped to see what he does next because, yeah, I don't think he gets enough love from Cage Warriors fans, probably because he's not British or anything like that. But yeah, Dan Deutsch, keep an eye on this guy because at 135 pounds, like, he's a serious bruiser. Finished fights with his hands, finished fights via submission, an all-round tough guy. I think it's 9 wins now for Dan Deutsch, 9-2, all 9 of his wins via finish. So someone to keep an eye on for sure. Then we had Giacomo Michaelis versus Idris Emroivili. Not a crazy amount to say about this fight. 30-27 Michaelis just blanketed Emroivili, very well off his, Emroivili had some good submission defense off his back, but he did nothing really. You can't win fights based off defense. Don't want to say too much about this fight, it just wasn't that fun, but Giacomo Michaelis, 30-27, good performance from him. In keeping with the theme of submissions on this fight, we had Emanuele Sabatino versus Aaron Johnson. First round submission for Emanuele Sabatino. Just, very impressive. Aaron Johnson is no slouch. Sabatino was sharp early, marginally missed with a glancing head kick, and then had a really slick wrestling entry to get Johnson down. Once he got Johnson down, straight into the head and arm choke, put Johnson right to sleep. So another quick submission for Clark Kent. Great nickname. We had Clark Kent and Superman on this card. Obviously, Shaj Haque's nickname is Superman. So just those two aliases on the same card. Nothing to see here. Emanuele Tete versus Dario Palazzo was also pretty fun. Palazzo got knocked out a minute into the fight. Tete had rapid hands, smooth left hook. Really impressed with that. Both fighters were going at it like they'd been fired out of a cannon for that first minute. Palazzo had a really good calf kick in there. He really tried to swarm Tete, and in doing so, left head kick from Tete completely freezes Palazzo, rushes him with wing and hooks, knocks him down, referee's forced to step in. Lovely finish. This is probably the most retweeted finish I saw from this card, actually. It was either that or the Leon Hill one. I think aesthetically people prefer to see knockouts than submissions, so Tete's one got the Caposa seal of approval. So you always like to see that if you're a fighter on one of these cards. I'm sure it gives you good exposure getting the old Caposa seal of approval. And then to round off what was an exceptional card and an exceptional batch of prelims, we had Florian Doishka versus Amir Malikpour. Loved this fight purely because we all do. We love seeing comeback wins, right? If someone's getting handily beaten and then they come back in the next round and they dish out their own bit of violence and they end up winning, we love seeing it, right? And that's exactly what we saw in this fight. Florian Doshka marched Malikpour down in the first round really well. Right hand landing at ease, calf kicks definitely adding up. Drops Malikpour at some point in there. Then had a lot of control against the fence, but just pressuring the hell out of Malikpour. Malikpour had no real maneuvering ability off the back foot. It just looked like Doshka was all over him. The right hook was automatic from Doshka. Mixed up his shots really well by going to the body. Malikpour was returning fire, in fairness to him, so he was never down and out, but he was definitely losing and getting dropped and everything. I thought, well, this is a set-up fight for Doshka to win and, get us off on the right foot on these prelims. But Amir Malikpour in the second round, props to him. Just another fun fighter from Sweden. They always produce some dogged guys, and Malikpour's another one of them. Had the excellent double leg right at the start of the round on Doshka, got him down, went straight into full mount, landed shot after shot after shot on the ground, busted Doshka up, just bullied him on the ground. A total clinic. Excellent comeback from Malikpour in that second round. Referee forced to step in. I'm always excited to see what guys do after performances like that, because Malikpour's got a really kind of good background. He's got gold medals in a bunch of things, and as a pro, he's lost to Alexander Loof, which is nothing to turn your nose up at. I mean, that's Luke Riley's next opponent, undefeated fighter. Had a great AMI career. Did Malikpour, fought in the IMAFs, 2018 IMAFs. So yeah, I'm super hyped to see this guy. I love my Nordic fighters anyways, and yeah, Malikpour just seems like violence every time he goes out there. He's only gone to decision a couple of times, and then all his other fights are finishes. So very excited to see Malikpour out there again. But that wraps up the prelim portion, and in effect wraps up the whole recap of this card. Guys, I can't talk highly enough about the Shaj Haque performance. He was immense. Go back and watch it. Even if you have watched it, go back and watch it again. Shaj Haque is that guy. Amazing performance from him. But yeah, so many great finishes on this card. Awesome batch of prelims. Like I said, best of the year for me under the Cage Warriors banner. Coming up, though, we're going to go a while without a card here for Cage Warriors, but what I'm going to be doing in August is I'm going to be effectively doing like a Lads on Tour episode where we're going to look at, previewing the Contender Series fights for Oban Elliott, for George Hardwick, for Emra Sonmez as well, who's in there. We're basically just going to kind of chop it up, talk about those three guys, do a bit of like fighter breakdown, but roll it all into the same episode, and just, if not a preview, then we'll do a recap. But I like the idea of preview because I imagine, God forbid, but if all three of them lose, I'm going to come in here and just sound like a dope for 45 minutes. But that's what I plan to do in August, because we don't have another card until September 8th, which is Cage Warriors 159 in San Diego. We've got Roberto Hernandez is on that card, a guy I hold in really high regard. And we're probably going to have Mason Jones on that card because he's been asking for it. And it was the first thing he said when his fight ended, when they followed him backstage. They posted the footage afterwards, but he said that he wants in on that San Diego card. Maybe Kyle Driscoll. But yeah, in September, we got the San Diego, and then we've got the Manchester card, which Luke Riley, Alexander Loof, and James Hendon, Tobias Harilla already confirmed. Need I say more? That's going to be just total violence. But other than that, not much else to say about Cage Warriors 158, but feel free to tweet me, message me on Instagram, Yellow Gloves Pod on both. If you've got any opinions about this card, any opinions about upcoming cards, or anything at all that you want to chat about, more than happy to do so. But other than that, if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to like it, share it, retweet it, leave nice feedback. It's available everywhere: Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. You've got the web browser link as well through Buzzsprout. Just wherever you can find podcasts, I promise you it's there. And if it's not, I'll give you a $5 and I'll start uploading to whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. But I'd be very, very, very concerned if you're listening to podcasts on any random platforms that aren't the ones that I already mentioned. But thank you for listening, guys. Really appreciate it. Catch you all on the next one.